Hello everyone and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. I'm Mandy Lockley and today I'm going to be talking about the full moon in Sagittarius on May the 23rd. I've called this video Hope and Optimism because these are some of the highest and best qualities of Sagittarius, that future-oriented hope and optimism. But before we talk specifically about this full moon, let's discuss a couple of other things that are happening in the sky before May 23rd. I'm recording this on the 16th of May, and on the 17th of May, we have Mercury in Taurus square Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees. So if you have anything in your chart between 0 and say 3 degrees of Taurus and Aquarius, or even the other fixed signs of Leo or Scorpio, you might feel some of the themes of these. It's a very fast moving aspect. Mercury root moves fast. Going to be feeling it for a day and a half at most, I think. What we can do, because Mercury is about news, it's about information, it's about so-called facts, it's about where we get our news and information from the media, whether it's social media or the news or whatever. So that might be a way of watching to see how, on that day, on the 17th, to see what secrets might be revealed. It's very good, Mercury, to be following the news when there's something mercurial happening in the sky. It's a good way to learn about the themes of Mercury. Secrets revealed, scandals, abuses of power. These things could hit the news during this time, this around about the 17th, 18th even. Sometimes there's something will happen on the day of the aspect and then could be reported a day or two afterwards. So have a little think about that. If it affects your chart, of course, you might be more in tune with themes. Maybe personal life, some secrets might be revealed, or you might understand something that you didn't understand before. You might have solved some kind of puzzle. Look out for negative thinking and dark thoughts. Negative thinking and dark thoughts. If you have negative thinking and dark thoughts that are unhelpful, perhaps a good way of dealing with that is to, when you notice them, to say, I'm going to cancel that dark negative thought and replace it with a more helpful thought. What is the more helpful thought? Well, how can I transform? Pluto likes to transform information, transform the information that the thoughts in your head, because as I said, Mercury is about the mindset, to something more helpful. Mercury is the psychopomp. Little known correspondence between Mercury and Pluto, because in the myth, the Greek counterpart Hermes, Mercury's Greek counterpart Hermes is a psychopomp, which means Mercury could go into the underworld, unlike the other gods who couldn't visit the lair of Pluto. Mercury could go there and come back with secrets, come back with information revealed that was hidden before. So that's really interesting to think about, that correspondence between Mercury and Pluto. Then the next day, on the 18th of May, we have the Sun conjunct Jupiter at 28 degrees of Taurus, and at the same time, very close to it, we have Venus in Taurus conjunct Uranus in Taurus at 23 degrees. So again, if you've got anything in the fixed signs, those fixed signs I've just mentioned, anything in those fixed signs around sort of 27, around sort of 22 to 29 degrees, thematically, you might feel some of that energy. So what does that mean? Well, anything with the sun, it shines a light on whatever it touches. So we're shining a light on Jupiterian qualities. These are about, as I've already said, that Jupiterian, Sagittarian quality of hope and optimism, but seeing things from a fresh perspective, from a higher perspective, seeing a broadening of horizons, the potential for the broadening of horizons. And then we have Venus conjunct Uranus, also in Taurus. Uranus is about freedom and independence. It's about authenticity when it comes to Venus and Uranus, authenticity in your relationships, maybe even wake-up calls in relationships. Again, these are very fast-moving, probably for a day or two at most, these aspects. But it's about how are you being authentic in your values? Are you living your values? Because Venus is about values as well. But both Jupiter and Uranus are forward, future oriented planets. So we could also see some movement, some development of the seeds, whatever's being seeded or planted or begun or started since April, when we had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. These will continue to grow so long as we feed and nurture them, as long as they're positive. If any weeds grow up, i.e. things we don't want, then we can get rid of them. But positive seedlings that come up from our plans, our dreams, our hopes, related to the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in April. Remember, it's a 13, 14-year cycle. So there's time to develop things. Often with a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, we see the potential, but we don't actually see how things have worked out until further down the line in this cycle, in this 14-year cycle. But we might at this time, when we have some really nice aspects for Jupiter and Uranus very close together, because we're still really in Jupiter-Uranus conjunction mode, we can see the potential, and we can see the potential for growth. We can see opportunity. There's something to watch out for. As I say, particularly if it touches your chart, it's in the late degrees of the fixed signs. You might also want to look at what house 23 to 28 of Taurus falls in your chart, and you can look at your chart at astro.com to see that. And if you're not sure about what the houses mean, they are areas of life. Again, as I usually do, I'll put the little link to the video I did, which briefly describes which areas of life each house corresponds to. So then we have the 19th of May, we have Mars conjunct the North Node. Mars in Aries conjunct the North Node in Aries. So this is about stepping into our inner warrior energy. The North Node has been in Aries for a little while, and it's all about that warrior energy, the positive, it's trying to encourage us to step into the positive warrior energy. Our own individuality. Aries is about being yourself uncompromisingly. It's about focus. Again, it's about independence. We just talked about Uranus being about independence. Aries is a very independent sign. It's also an initiating sign. It's the start of something new in our own lives, potentially, particularly if it touches your chart. It's in around in the 20s of Aries. So if you've got anything around the 20s, I'll mention exactly where the degrees are when we look at the chart for the full moon. But of course, Mars can also be about anger. Mars in Aries, it said, is fast to anger, but anger disseminates itself very quickly. So anger might come up quickly, as if from nowhere, for healing. That's what it's coming up for healing. Perhaps there might be anger about past events coming up in your life, past events coming up. They're coming up to be cleared. The nodes are about karmic patterns, and when things come up related to the nodes, it's karmic patterns often that come up. It's also about meetings with people. We might meet people that might trigger something in us. Again, just to be aware of that. So Mars in Aries doesn't have patience, doesn't want to really dwell in the past. So there's some helpful energy there as well. And then on the 26th of April, so I'm looking forward, and we can actually now past that full moon, but just to mention while we're on the subject of Mars, on the 26th of April, Mars in Aries hits the 19th degree of Aries, which was the degree of the April total solar eclipse. So we might have echoes coming in. We can look again into the world, into news, into social media and things that are happening in the world to see echoes of things that might have happened or related to the themes of the total solar eclipse. And you can look at my video if you want to about the total solar eclipse. You can see a photo there in the background of the total solar eclipse, which was taken by my friend and colleague Rod Chang, who travelled from London to Texas just to photograph the eclipse, and it's an absolutely stunning picture. But I digress. The echoes of things that happened in the eclipse, particularly if that eclipse touched you personally. So, what else? Oh, this is interesting. On the 20th of May, the Sun is conjunct Sedna. Sedna is one of the dwarf planets, named after an Inuit goddess. I've done a whole video about Sedna, and well, 2 videos. I mentioned her in my video about the new moon recently because she's just moved into Gemini, and also I've done a whole video about Sedna as well. And again, I'll put those links because there's not much time here to go into much detail. But Sun conjunct Sedna, well, what might that mean? Well, Sedna's just gone into Gemini. She has a really, 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 really long orbit. So she's going to be in Gemini until 2067. So we've got a lot of time in Gemini for Sedna. Again, when the Sun meets anything, it's very swift. The Sun moves around 1 degree a day. So it's a very short thing, but the Sun shines a light. Shines a light. Helios was the sun in the myth, as was Apollo. So those gods, those sort of male-oriented gods, shining a light on the female experience, particularly the female experience of the patriarchy. Why do I say that? Because of the myth. Very briefly, again, you need to watch the whole video or do your own research, but you know, it's very simple, the myth really to understand. She was given away by her father, Sedna, she was a mortal woman given away to her husband by her father. Her husband abandoned her. Her father went to collect her in his canoe across the ocean. He also abandoned her in a storm to save himself by throwing her over the edge into the deep ocean. She did cling on to the side of the canoe, but he cut her fingers off so she couldn't get back in. She went to the depths of the dark ocean, as did her fingers. Those fingers, those digits that had been cut off, transformed, metamorphosized into the beautiful sea creatures that we all love and adore, the dolphins, the whales, the turtles, for example. And she became the goddess of the deep oceans. So what's the message here? Well, shining a light on that, shining a light on the patriarchal system that has, I think many of us, most of us can agree, has not benefited the feminine as much as it's benefited the male patriarchy. Certainly it hasn't respected the divinity of the female experience, because religion and faith has been taken over by, in the most part, the patriarchy. But with these dwarf planets coming in, not just Sedna, but Haumea and Aries, we're having more idea of what the divine feminine really, really is, and how it's so important for balance. This isn't crush the patriarchy, crush the male divinity. It's about finding that balance between the male and female. And it's not even a gender thing, because we all have that male and female divine energy within us, and we need to find the energy. Another message of Sedna is an ecological message. Remember, Gemini is all about information, facts, and messages. An environmental message to protect our waters and the creatures within it. I am of the belief, and science is coming to that belief as well, that animals have sentience too, or I would call that actually souls too. Anyone that's loved an animal, loved a pet, will know they have feelings, they have needs, they have desires, they feel love as much as they feel fear. So just as a little aside at the moment, talking about the water, how we must look after the water, not just the oceans, but the water in the UK at the moment. There's a huge scandal about raw sewage being pumped into our waterways, into our rivers into our iconic lakes, such as Windermere in the Lake District, how some people in the south of England have been told to boil water before they drink it because it's not safe currently to drink the tap water, and so on and so forth. People are asked not to swim in the sea and all that. So we really need to be thinking more about not just the cleanliness of our waters, but our health and the health of the creatures within it. But that's a little bit of an aside here. But let's share the screen so we can see now the chart for the full moon in Sagittarius. As I said, hope and optimism. You can see here that the sun in Sagittarius is at 2 degrees 55. Sorry, the moon in Sagittarius is at 2 degrees 55 and the sun is at 2 degrees 55 of Gemini. The sun's in the ninth house towards the top of the chart. Ignore the houses. It's likely that this will fall in different houses in your location or in your birth chart, but I always set my chart for London, so we can ignore the houses. But we can see that opposition there, the red line I've drawn, so you can see it pretty clearly. You can also see that Sedna at 0 degrees of Gemini, a symbol that looks a little bit like a H, is also conjunct this full moon. So again, it's shining a light. Now, what is a full moon? A full moon is the full reflection of the sun. The sun is full, it's light, it's bright. We can see things. Darker the moon, the new moon is when we can't see things because it's dark. But the full moon, we can see things. Things come to light. So if you've got anything, say 0 to 3, 4 degrees of the mutable signs, which is of course Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo and Pisces as well, then this will have a you know, it'll connect strongly to your birth chart. Jupiterian themes. What are Jupiterian themes for the moon in Sagittarius? Well, the moon is about our needs. It's about how we get our needs met. So how can we help to get our needs met during this full moon? Think about optimism. High spirits is another nice phrase for Sagittarius. Think about the value and how we need faith and how we need a strong belief system. What are our belief systems? What do we believe in? Not just religion, but our belief and our values in generally. We need to have faith in the law. Sagittarius is about the law, and also in morality. What is our own morality? Faith in the future. We need to have faith. To have hope and optimism, we need to have faith in the future, in a better future, meaning and purpose in life. So these are some very strong Sagittarian themes. It's also about needing to learn at a higher level, that kind of learning through experience. It's higher education, Sagittarius, as well, sort of, you know, your university type education. But it's also about learning through experience as well. The sun is in Gemini. Gemini is more about schooling and facts and information and disseminating and you know, when we do our lower exams in most countries, we are, you know, writing down and answering questions based on facts that we have learned. Whereas Sagittarius demands that those facts should have some meaning and some deep understanding. So you can see there that balance between Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is about information because we have got sun in Gemini by the time of this full moon. So we're going into Gemini season very shortly. Jupiter will be going into Gemini. I'll talk about that very shortly as well. But Gemini is curiosity, about wanting information. It's about facts. Facts are not necessarily truth. We might see the facts. Facts can be interpreted in many different ways. That's where Sagittarius comes in, because facts need to have meaning. What is the truth? Sagittarius wants to find the truth. We see all these facts, and we might have a million facts, which may actually just be opinions, because again, opinions is Gemini. What are these facts? What are opinions? And where do we find meaning within them? matters to us, what feels real and truthful for us. Now, Jupiter, Sagittarius's planet, expands what it touches for the good or the bad, although, you know, Jupiter is considered a lucky planet. But of course, we make our own luck and we can push our luck. Now, in the full moon here, we might push our luck. You know, full moon, we're more likely to be out and about, to be partying, to be sociable. So one little caveat here is not pushing your luck. Overconfidence or hubris can lead to, you know, lead you into a path you might not want to go down. Gambling, taking too many risks. However, it's time to have fun. It's time to have fun. I think we can have a bit of fun during this full moon. So what else do we see here? I've already mentioned we've got Sedna there. So Sedna is about these messages that come up from the deep. Another theme, really, messages from the deep. We already talked about earlier. We had a little taste of deep messages with that Pluto Mercury square. But Sedna's messages come from literally the deep ocean in the myth, but that deep ocean is about our conscious, our subconscious, isn't it? So messages from the subconscious. Accessing those, how do we access those messages? We access those messages through, we can access those messages through really feeling an affinity with the gods and the goddesses by really tuning in. If, you know, if we're you know, involved in sort of psychic development in any way, or even any of us in you know, if we do meditation, we can kind of go deep into meditation. So what are the messages coming up from the deep within me? What are the gods and goddesses got to tell me today? That might be some deep, meaningful work that you might want to do during this full moon. As I say, things are more open, more bright, more available to be seen. But you'll see here as well in the 9th house, Venus conjunct Jupiter at 29 degrees of Taurus here. The 29th degree of any sign is known as the anaretic degree, or some astrologers call it the critical degree. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you hear anaretic or critical, it's the same thing. But basically means any planet that's at 29 degrees, which is the last degree of every sign, it's 29 degrees. So there's an urgency there often. There's an urgency to complete the work of that planet in that sign. So again, we could maybe rush and, you know, sort of overdo it by trying to be impatient and get things done too quickly. So again, talking about risk taking, you know, I would, you know, there might be the potential for taking risks with money or in relationships. Venus can be about money, Taurus can be about money. Venus, of course, is about relationships. So something to bear in mind. The other thing about this critical or anaretic degree is that it can sometimes bring out the more negative qualities of the planets and the sign. So think really about, you could think really about Taurus, it could be greed or attachment or not wanting to let go of things. In the 29 degrees, where you really are letting go of something because you need to move on to the next sign. So you might be thinking about that. You might be also thinking, because it's Jupiter, you might be thinking about, you know, taking a bit of a risk or a bit of a gamble, or being overconfident, as I've already mentioned. So just things to be aware of, although this is really a very, very, very positive thing. It's a very positive full moon in many, many ways. So have fun, but don't go over to the top. Don't take on too much. We always tend to take on too much when Jupiterian, sort of Sagittarius, is involved. We always seem to take on too much. And it might also be a time in the run up to the full moon. So between, as I say, I'm recording this on the 16th. So between the 16th and when we come up to the full moon, time to take a little bit of a rest as well before we move fully into the Gemini season, because Gemini is busy, that curiosity, that variety, wanting to do change, wanting to change things, want to do lots of different things. So we might use the last few days of the strong Taurus energy just to to indulge in a few sensual comforts and a little bit of rest. Then on the 26th of May, Jupiter goes into Gemini. So we've already talked about Gemini, about, excuse me, about facts and information, about variety. We might have too much choice. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, and Gemini might have too much choice, too much to do, a to-do list that's too long. Our energy might feel a little bit scattered and splintered off. We've got 12 months of Jupiter in Gemini because it has a 12-month cycle. Jupiter spends 12 months in each sign. So we've got time to work with this energy. Traditionally, it's not a great sign for Jupiter. Jupiter is at its best in Sagittarius and also in Pisces. In Gemini, there's that sense of, you can't really go deep enough. There's so much facts and information, so much going on and change and variety and so much flexibility needed that there's not that time there really to sort of go into that depth of meaning and wisdom, although it is possible. So stay curious. Stay curious. Don't accept every fact as truth. Don't accept every piece of gossip or rumor as truth. Be careful be selective where you get your information from, particularly from the news, from social media, from office gossip and that kind of thing. Select carefully. But also it's a good Jupiter for exploring a wide range of interests as well. So I hope that's really helpful. Just to go back to say about about Mars conjunct North Node, we're talking round about sort of the 14th, 15th, 13th, 14th, 15th degree of Aries, or even Libra, which is the opposite because the North Node and the South Node are an axis. So I didn't mention that degree before, but now in case you want to know if you're going to be particularly affected by Mars conjunct the North Node, it's around about sort of 13, 15, 16, 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, 16 degrees of Aries and also Libra, and maybe even the other cardinal signs of Capricorn and Cancer, essentially. So before I sign off, I'm going to stop sharing this chart now. Just a little bit about the sort of general energy that we're experiencing. You might have noticed in the news, because it's been a big news story, that there has been massive solar storms. April, as we know, was intense. May so far has had intense moments, but it's been a lot about sort of integration. Many of us have needed to or been forced to rest during May. And these massive solar storms have resulted in the aurora borealis, the northern lights, being visible in places where it's not normally visited, such as parts of the US and in south of England, for example, where you never normally see it. Beautiful light, beautiful energy coming into the planet at this time. Awakening energy. Many of us have been awakening to our innate divinity, that we are part of the divine. We are little fractals of little pieces of the divine. That divine feminine I've always talked about, exemplified by Sedna and some of the other dwarf planets, coming in, that awareness and that energy coming in. So it's an awakening period for some of us, and that can be quite exhausting as well. So we must remember that when we are sensitive to the energies, such as the energies of these solar storms that we've just had over the last week or two, and some of them are, I think they're even ongoing, because I think we're at a solar peak at the moment. It takes time to sort of really integrate those energies. So you might have had some, I don't know, minor miracles or even big miracles happen in your life, or awakening up to something new, some new wisdom coming in. You might have also found some amplification of sort of things that you might need to heal in yourself, sort of beliefs We'd already talked about Jupiter and Sagittarius being about beliefs. They're coming up, I think, to be released and let go of. So some wonderful energies, but some very strong energies. So be kind to yourself. If you're feeling these strong energies, if you're feeling like wired, or if you're feeling tired, or a combination of wired and tired, do be kind to yourself. Take a rest, go inwards, listen to some beautiful music, do some meditations, go into nature. Really be kind to yourself, because this is a fantastic time. Generally, the cosmic energy generally is a fantastic time for using this awakening to really heal ourselves, and in healing ourselves of our patterns of our negativity, and moving into who we really are as we strip away who we have been programmed to be during our life to become who we really are. It's amazing work, but it can be quite exhausting work. So let's all be kind to ourselves. I just wanted to make that little note about the general energy before I go. But as I say, second half of May, there's some fantastic energy going around, some fantastic aspects that we can feel and we can use, and we can continue our awakening and continue our healing journey. Life is actually, I think, a healing journey. We're coming to heal, not just, I believe in past lives, you may not, but not just to heal the things that happened to us in past lives, also the things happened early in our early life experience in this incarnation, but also ancestral things as well. I'll leave that with you, and I will send it to you, and I hope you receive this video with the love that I am putting into it. Thanks very much, and thanks to all my subscribers and new subscribers.